Testing, testing. Never know a better way to start a live stream by saying, I think we should be live. And then I'm gonna double check. We're a couple minutes early. So like the stream going as people are joining in. But if you're already here, it's also good to verify you can hear me, see me. Occasionally, like things look good on my end, but sometimes there's some lag somewhere, something like that. So I always like to double check. And as you're joining, feel free, please, to say hello in the chat. Maybe where you're streaming from, where you're watching from. And then obviously, I think a little bit more details is even more fun. Like why this book is interesting to you. What are you building right now? What are you learning? Are you building stuff with AI? Somewhere else in the data space? This is the AI book club, and we'll go through the format and stuff here in a little bit and a little bit more about the book. But we've been reading a book every month and for over 2 years now. Even before that, before it was every month, we were doing a book club stuff locally in Seattle and then became online during COVID and then expanded out to somehow doing a book every month, which is kind of wild sometimes. Like this month's book was pretty dense and hard to cram through. So not everyone reads the book either, and that's totally fine if you're here and you just want to talk about the subjects and add comments or your real life experiences. Sometimes the discussion goes off the rails from exactly the book content, which I think is the cool part about a book club is you get to hear people's experiences, not just exactly what was in the book. And people are saying hello in the chat. They're saying, yes, sounds good. Someone said hello from the Bay Area. They said they can see and hear me from North Texas, from Miami. And the person from Miami is working on new agentic AI methods for utilities power delivery system. That's awesome. I love seeing like use cases like that. I haven't worked personally in like the power sector yet, but I keep seeing on agents anyway, specifically, and I keep seeing so many cool like use cases pop up around it. Someone said, welcome to from Pennsylvania, coming from a data analytics background. Awesome. Awesome. Also, I'll share a link here. Well, I've done this a little bit different ways. If you do want to come up on the stream and talk in video or audio form, you're welcome to. I'll share this probably a couple times. I think the best way right now, I've had the best success for this is because it's not a public link for every single person to just automatically join. But if you want to join, you can message me on LinkedIn, and then I can give you an invite link. But you're also just welcome to keep talking in the chat. A lot of people like discussing in the chat, and then I will pull from the chat and like read your comments out and even show them on screen. Actually, let me show the whole feed on screen. But I can actually highlight specific comments as well and kind of bring them up. So if there's, you're more than welcome to stay in there. I know a lot of people prefer it that way. I think it's a little bit easier. But if you do want to come up and join the audio, so it's not just me up here, you're welcome to. We have some regulars that do sometimes come up, but I'm not sure if they're going to make it today. And cool, I see a lot more people joined in. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome. And I'll reiterate a little bit if you're already here and just kind of start going through the slides, which also you can find here. Not that there's a ton in there, it's just kind of really the chapter titles. And then I have some takeaways that I added in there. When it's a dense book like this is what I did last time, because it's really hard to go through every chapter and subchapter in detail here, and hard for me to even remember it all for this type of book. So if you do have anything like specifically in chapters, we'll go through it and we can go back and reference them. I also kind of put some of my top takeaways and worded them in the space I'm at, which like I work in the AI orchestration tooling space. So I specifically kind of phrase it into an AI orchestration tool and talk about how you might use Flight, which is the open source one we work on. But this book isn't about that or anything like that. I just like to frame it in how I'm going to use this in my AI type of work. So that's what I did. But we don't even have to go through that if other people have more discussion points that they want in the chapter. Oh, and let me just make sure. Okay, yeah. I think I should be live on the LinkedIn stream as well. Yep, okay, cool. Just wanted to double check. All right, so I'm going to go through, and again, this is kind of a loose structure here, but mostly a discussion. This is the book, by the way. Here's a link to the book as well. Let me actually get joined in the LinkedIn stream so I can share links there as well. Give me 1 second, everyone. So this is the link to the book. It was Designing Data-Intensive Applications. And this is actually, I feel like, one of the more requested books that people wanted to read, or at least they said they wanted to read. I don't know if they actually did read it this month. If you've read this book, let me know in the chat as well. Or if you read the first edition. So people were actually requesting this before the second edition came out, which it just came out. It was either early this year or in December. I think it was early this year, like in January or February. And then we were waiting for the second edition to add it to the book club. So the first edition's been out for quite some time, and a lot of people reference it as design patterns for their data-intensive applications, just like in the title. And then just to recap on the format for this, again, we read a new book every month and discuss online. I did not post that much in the Slack this month for the book club because we've also been doing a weekly live stream on building projects. But there is a Slack channel. It's for Flight, the open source orchestration tool that I talked about earlier. And if you want to join the Slack and discuss things during the month, you can. Also, if you're interested in kind of the other project-based stream that I mentioned, as well as Flight, the orchestration tool, and a whole bunch of stuff in just the MLOps community in general, you can check out the Slack channel. There's over like 5,500 people in there, so check it out. And I need to update this GitHub, but there is a GitHub for the book club. I'm actually going to update this week because I need to post all the other events coming up. I have the book selected. They just haven't been posted yet. And then the best way to stay up to date is probably where you found this on Meetup or Luma. Luma calendar is always going to be the source of truth. So go subscribe there if you haven't already, if you want to stay up to date with everything. And then to recap our 2026, what we've read so far is we started with machine learning, with a hands-on machine learning with scikit-learn and PyTorch. And then we did AI system performance engineering. Both of these were about 1,000 pages or over. This one was over. This was almost 1,000 pages. And then we did context engineering for multi-agent systems. That felt like such a light read after these books. And then we're at this book this month, Designing Data-Intensive Applications. I think this was like 600 something pages. But I will say it was very dense because there wasn't a lot of code examples. So it was a very good book, a little harder to read quickly for me because it's just a lot of concepts, which is really good. A lot for my brain to kind of crunch on. And I'll probably go back to this when those topics come up in my work that I want to revisit. And then for May, so next month, we're going to read text to image generator, or build a text to image generator from scratch, which is part of a series from Manning. The Build a Large Language Model from Scratch, which is a different author, was a fantastic book that we read just over a year ago. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. I haven't read it yet, but it's a really good series. So that if you're interested in like diffusion models and stuff like that, it's going to go in depth, I believe. I haven't read it. In depth of how to create that and how they all work under the hood. So I'm very excited for that. And then this was a community recommendation as well, was the agentic architecture patterns for building multi-agent systems. I haven't read this either. Skimming the chapters, it sounds pretty good if you're looking to dive more into agents, which several of the books have been about in the past year. I don't need to recap all the books we read last year, but if you wanted to see kind of what we did. And then what should we read next? One of my favorite questions for the audience is always, what book do you want to read next? There's a whole bunch that are coming out this year that aren't quite out yet. I need to go revisit and see if any of them are. But most of them, I think, are coming out this summer that I have in here or a little bit later. But if you have a book in mind, let me know in the chat or let me know in the Slack channel later if you want to kind of read it together with a community. And if you want to come up on stream and talk about it, that'd be awesome. As well as a whole bunch of people just joined the stream. So I wanted to mention again, if you do want to come up and talk with your audio or video, you can message me on LinkedIn and I can send you an invite. I don't have just a public invite link, so trolls and stuff don't join. But you can message me if you want to come up here. Or just keep talking in the chat, which a lot of people prefer, and is totally fine too. And I'll just kind of read the comments and revamp them for the audience here. And someone mentioned vector databases. I think there was a specific book, one of the vector database books that I had in here. Yeah, this one. So I'll go check. I don't think it's out yet, but good to know. It's in the list. I'm excited to read that one. A lot of these that you can see are in early access right now, listed in their cover. And so as soon as they come out of that, then I want to actually add them into the reading list, because sometimes they get delayed. Someone said AI agent with MCP and LMs and generative AI for healthcare. Looks interesting. And someone said building agents. Awesome. These are all good. I'm going to look up the healthcare one. Oh, this is the healthcare one. This one actually is out. I know it's a little bit older. It's not old by any means, but well, I guess by AI means it is. Like, they might have come out in 2024 or something like that. I'll go skim it before we actually post it and make sure that it's maybe this one's even older than 2024. Yeah. So I want to make sure it's, somewhat relevant. So it said any new book which helps in designing AI systems. Cool. Awesome. Well, if other ones come up for people that aren't in this list, it doesn't have to be these ones. These are just some that I had grabbed that I thought looked interesting. Let me know in the chat now, but also in the Slack channel too, if there's any ones you specifically want to read, or if there's just any topics that you're interested in, let me know as well. And then I can search those topics and see if there's any out currently that fit that topic. Sometimes it takes a while for books to catch up for hot topics like world models, for example, and even modern reinforcement learning. Like, a lot of the reinforcement learning books were written in 2020. They don't have like the latest stuff like GRPO in them. So that sometimes there's a lag between books and topics that we want to learn. So again, the format here, say hello, talk in the chat. People are already doing that. Message me. I'd shared the link on LinkedIn if you want to join in the actual stream here. That'd be great. Otherwise, I'll just be talking. Hopefully you still enjoy that. It's often more fun when someone else does come up, but no pressure. You can keep talking in the chat if that works better for you. And then shout out before we dive into the chapter contents of the book. This has been a pretty fun community that we've been building here. And I've seen during shoutouts before me being like, who's hiring? Is anyone looking for a job? And sometimes it's around that specific industry that we're talking about in the book. And then I know they've gotten, I don't know if they got the job, but I know they've gotten an interview just from it. So I always like to ask before we dive into the chapters, is anyone hiring? Is anyone looking for a job? And then also just feel free to share any other awesome projects you're working on as well. This is kind of the open shout out space for it, or time for it, as people are still joining in here. And I think it's been really fun seeing people being like, I'm hiring. Like, we were reading a finance book, a reinforcement finance book, and someone was hiring in the finance space, and someone had just come out of college for it. And I know they got an interview from just the shout out section here. So I want to leave a minute for that. And as you're thinking of cool stuff to shout out, again, whether you're hiring, looking for a job, any other awesome projects you're working on, I have a couple that I will add. Is the next book club, like I mentioned, here's actually the link for it. I'll post this in the chat. And then we are hiring at Union. So this is where I work. I'm an AI engineer at Union AI. We build awesome tools around like AI orchestration. So like doing scalable workflows and inference. And today we also just released version 2 dev box of our open source, which is Flight. You've heard me mention Flight a couple times. If you're here at the beginning, that's what the Flight is, our open source community Slack. And then I'm going to tie some of the stuff, if people don't want to go deeper in some of the chapters themselves, some of the stuff I had learned into how Flight AI orchestration helps with like the data design, or the designing data intensive systems, how I think about it from the AI side. Oh, and then also I'd mentioned that we've been doing these kind of really fun weekly project-based streams that are pretty casual. So if you just want to hack on something during the week and then talk about it at this event on Friday, whether just in the chat or actually join the stream and show off your project, that's happening every Friday so far at 12. I'm sure some Fridays I'll have to skip in the future, but that's been really, really, really fun. And it's been a really good forcing function for me to work on whatever that topic is. So the one this Friday is vector stores, and we're going to have a whole bunch of different topics, and you can spend at least an hour learning or building on that topic, which could be something from like this book or something else as well. Any other shout outs from anyone else? No one's hiring. Nobody's looking for a job. Everyone's happily employed. If you are, again, feel free to join the Slack channel and add any comments there later. Catching up on a couple comments. Someone said intelligence document processing pipelines. Was that? I think that was during this book part, I think. Oh, I think that might have just been a topic to look for. So I'll look at that and see. Actually, there might be some new OCR ones that at least that would be a good subject for it. And then someone said there's always a new on the same author as LM from scratch that's in pre-release. Oh yeah, building reasoning models from scratch. That one will definitely go on the list as soon as it comes out. I don't want to do the pre-release. We'll wait for it to fully come out, which I think is late July. So we'll do it in probably August as our book to read, because I love I have it up here, the LM reasoning, or sorry, the LM from scratch book is really, really good. And the next one's going to be the reasoning LM from scratch. So you'll build that again, I assume, from scratch like you did in the first one with like NumPy, etc. And you really learned the fundamentals behind the systems. All right, so the chapter topics. Again, this is the book club. If anyone wants to join the stream, find me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can keep the discussion in the chat, and I'll keep bringing up comments from there. I'm going to read off the chapter titles and then see if people have comments on them or anything they want to dive deeper into. And then I have the sub chapters of these chapters broken out into other slides. And then we can just discuss whatever we want. So the chapter 1 is trade-offs in data system architecture. Kind of I think the high level summary of this is that there's always trade-offs for anything you choose. I think was the big thing here. Defining non-functional requirements. So not just functional requirements in your architecture, but like how fast things need to be to actually perform what you want it to be. Some things that you just might take for granted. And then data models and query languages, storage and retrieval, encoding and evolution. And then I think it might make sense when I go into the other chapters to see some of the sub stuff, because I even forget some of these I'm combining in my head which one was what. Like storage, I forget if storage had different storage types in there. Like, you might not want to store everything at JSON at scale, and you want to do protobufs because it's much more efficient. Replication with sharding. So if you're doing like distributed computing or training, how do you manage that data across different systems? Transactions. The trouble with distributed systems. This had some interesting stuff in here too. So I'm not a distributed system person. So I thought this is really interesting read. Like, I use distributed systems and I work on tools that help solve these problems, but I'm not like the backend engineer that works on that side of things. And there's interesting things in here too, like how just literally the clocks can be off, like the quartz crystal clocks or whatever inside of computers in data centers can be off a little bit when you're doing distributed systems. A lot of interesting small gotchas that like I take for granted. Consistency and consensus, and it goes into batch processing. And I think something that was new in this edition, again, people really, really liked the first edition of this one. This one, like as I mentioned, just came out either late last year in December or very early this year. So they added stuff around AI systems specifically. So like batch processing chapter goes into batch processing a lot for machine learning. Like doing features, training, etc., batch predictions. And then same with streaming. And I think another thing that was added, again, I forget which chapter, if it was the storage one, maybe, or if it was I think it was a storage one. Again, we'll look at the summaries of the chapters. Another thing they added was other things like storing things as data frames and as tensors and stuff that you're seeing more today if you're working kind of in the deep learning space, whereas I don't think the older book had that type of stuff in there. Then we talked about stream processing. Big difference. I mean, batches, you're going to load in a whole bunch of data. You need to figure out how you can, oftentimes, again, according to this book, like, because it talks a lot about distributed systems, how can you manage like putting the data in the right place across a distributed system, train a model, doing something like that, but also how batches usually know when the batch ends. So you have a kind of a finite amount of data and then it's going to end, where streaming, like they call it kind of unbounded, or what do they have a wording of like, it's like batch processing but unbounded, because it's real time. You don't know when it's going to end. There could be more data coming in at any time. And then they have the philosophy of streaming systems, And then they have a chapter on doing the right thing, which dives more into ethics around AI, data retention, and that can be used for things like surveillance and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool. They were very thoughtful about it. I thought it was a really, really good book. Like I was saying, it was very dense. So some parts of it, if it wasn't incredibly relevant to me, I went through, but I probably went through pretty fast on a couple of these chapters, and then just trying to keep the core concept so I can go back and revisit if I need to. It reminded me of, we had read the other year the data engineering book by Joe Reese, which is really good. It's kind of in that format where it goes really in depth into all these different concepts and different types of storage. Like in the data engineering book, that goes even to like tape storage and why you would want something like that versus different types that you're probably not thinking about every day as an engineer. But it's really, really interesting kind of review of the whole industry around like data intensive applications. So I'm curious, before I go into some other summaries of the different chapters or my top takeaways, did anyone else read the book or read part of the book, or maybe read the first edition? And did you have any top like takeaways from this that you'd want to bring in? Or did people just want to, people kept saying they wanted to read this book, but they wanted me to give a summary of it? And you didn't actually want to read it. Which also, on that note too, I'll go through when we talk about chapters, takeaways, etc. If people don't have like large discussion points, I'll go through on more of my thoughts. But I'm not going to read the entire book. I've seen some comments, like reviews on a meetup or whatever after I do it, and they're like, "Oh, they didn't like read the entire book out loud or something like that." Which this is not what that is. I've never seen a book club be that, by the way. I'm not gonna like read the whole thing as an audiobook. I don't think I even could. That's probably like copyright infringement. So I'm bringing up summaries of the chapters. We discuss it. This is a pretty casual kind of meeting, and then we can dive deeper into things that people want to. And someone said they read the first 4 chapters. And someone said they're reading the book now. Also, where are you at in the book, and how are you enjoying it? And then someone said to my comment, you mean this isn't a real-time audiobook recording? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I try to make this dynamic and be interesting for people, but yeah, I can't show the entire book or read the whole book if that's what you were expecting. And so is this mostly a concept based or project based? This is very concept based. So there's almost actually no code in here. So when I say it's a very dense book too, like talking about how it's easy to read, like the last book was probably also like 500 pages, but a lot of it's code. So when I'm reading like a book like this and then there's a lot of code, I kind of skim the code unless I actually want to go run it, but then I'll actually pull it from somewhere and like run it. But it feels a lot quicker to read, where this is very, very concept based. So every single one of these chapters goes really into depth into a lot of stuff. Like the first one is the trade-offs in data systems, data system architectures. These are all kind of the sub-chapters within that chapter. Same with defining non-functional requirements. So I'm trying to think of one that goes like this, has a lot of stuff. Data models and query languages goes into like, it has really good graphics in the book too. Again, I don't think I can show it. I don't want to get copyright striked or anything like that. But it's really good visual graphics of all these different types of things like data models, because a lot of the book is about concepts around how data interacts with databases, or how models interact with databases, or a query language interact with databases. So it has really good graphics for it. And like this example for the data models and query languages, these are all the sub chapters. And I actually like this too. Something I want to mess around with more that I haven't done yet is the graph database type of data modeling. So actually, the next AI Build and Learn is going to be around this. That's not posted yet. So I'm excited to dive into Neo4j and the Cypher query language. And after I said this wasn't going to be me reading the entire book out loud, I saw a lot of people drop. So I'm not sure if that's what people were expecting. As the people reading it or skimming it, were there any chapters that like really stood out to you, or any other questions about the book? if you're going into the space, or you're already in the space of like designing or thinking about designing data intensive systems, I thought it was a really good book. Again, it's not project based though, but if you want something to kind of read and absorb a lot of knowledge or concepts around it, I think it's going to be a really good one for you. I'll go into some of my kind of top takeaways that I was just kind of threw together. So I don't know if this is going to be worded incredibly well here. Oh, actually, I forgot. I think I was removing some of this. As these aren't really in order of like top well, so one of the things that I was thinking about as it relates to like machine learning is kind of they have this whole thing of the event log is your most valuable asset kind of throughout the whole book. This is what I think is mentioned at the beginning. And then I think in the philosophy part of the last chapter really ties back to this. It's like, in theory, hopefully you should, like, at least this can be the most valuable asset. I know every system's different, so might act a little bit differently. But every user action, model prediction, whatever you're doing, in my case, again, a lot of machine learning stuff, you want to keep like basically an entire log of that. And then not necessarily just overwrite the log, but append to it. So if something changes, and this is important when you're doing like machine learning in like healthcare setting, or I've worked in a little bit of like DoD manufacturing before, and I couldn't just like scribble something out and then say this is the current state of it. You always had to say that was the previous state. Now here's the current state. So you always had a log of what previous states were. And their argument is that that is one of the most valuable assets. And I think I kind of agree a lot with machine learning. If you're doing a lot of experimentation and you're producing a lot of model artifacts, or doing stuff with like changing your data set around, changing hyperparameters, you should have a list of all those changes that you can either go back to and see what the outcomes were. Or if you put a model in production, you have that list that you can see exactly like the whole data lineage to your machine learning model in production. And so again, I tied it to Flight. This could be really any orchestration or just any tool that you're building. So you could think about this in however you want, but again, tying into Flight because that's where I work with. But like with the Flight UI gives you, which again, we just launched DevBox. So if you want to try it just for free in the open source on any of your machines, it gives you a really cool UI where you can track all your artifacts. Like you do a training run, you're going to see like the hyperparameters, the data that went through between each task. Like you have the data and the input and output between every single task. And then that's always going to be logged there. And then you can even query that with like a SDK to pull that in and do something like that. And so this kind of answer, at least in my head, when they're talking about kind of having that whole log or ledger of things, which again could be really important for a lot of industries like healthcare. It's important, or I think it's valuable for pretty much any team. But there's some industries that actually like require this. Like I think a lot of fintech and healthcare. So if you want to go audit anything from a model in production, you can. But it's also really, really valuable as you're doing experimentation to see exactly how it worked when you tried it with other hyperparameters or data in the past. So you get like a whole log of things. So that was one, tying back into my experience. That totally makes sense for the machine learning space. The other one they talk about is like serving skew. And again, tying in machine learning, it's kind of like, or really it's just skew for doing actions. Tying into machine learning, I'm calling it like training and serving skew. And this goes back into like why people have Docker environments. So environments drift over time too. And you want to make sure when you redo runs, like in the machine learning case, that you're reusing the same type of environments across all runs. So it's incredibly reproducible. And then the other thing is tying back to that lineage piece, I think is always important for machine learning. But when you put something in production and you not just get like a environment drift, but then you get what's called data drift or model drift, where the model no longer is performing well on the data that's coming in production. And this kind of ties into like you could take from that data lineage that you have, you can exactly see what data was used to train that model, and then use a new algorithm that can compare against data coming in to that old data and look for data drift. So the data no longer really matches like what the model was trained on, then chances are your model's not performing as well. And then the other one was kind of the batch and streaming. Where there's a couple things I was trying to formulate in my head here. I'm not sure if the wording is quite right how I wrote it down, but basically when I've done some things in the past too with like fraud detection or something like that is a common use case when you use something like a feature store. And they actually didn't specifically mention feature stores in the chapter where they talk about batch and streaming. They might talk about feature stores in one of the previous chapters. I don't know if they actually specifically do, but a feature store allows you to like define you define or design like your features in a store, and then they have a way to query that reliably between different areas. And so like if you're doing batch inference or streaming for something like fraud detection, or the batch inference is for the training side, but then you're also using the feature store in production for doing like real-time fraud detection, you design your features once, and then they have the same selection criteria when you're running them on streaming versus batch for your training. And that sounds easy, but if you don't use something that stringently handles that, like the book talks about, then you can get this kind of feature drift. So you might say, oh, I think the book talks about this where you're basically saying, I'm going to use a 1 week window to look at my previous transactions from this user ID, and that's going to be used for the fraud detection. But in your batch one, they were defined a little bit differently, where maybe there's a different time cutoff, and it's one is a 7-day rolling window, and one is like a week or something like that. So then you get this kind of feature drift without realizing it because it sounds easy. So they talk about design it that thing once and then use it in both areas. And specifically how I've done this before is in the kind of something like that fraud detection example, where the batch piece is my training, like training XGBoost model with the feature store, and then using that feature store again in production with streaming data. So that's kind of how I was thinking about this. And then this kind of goes back into, I think, the first point again, but it's just the feedback loops are really important. And the book actually had an interesting part of this too, where they specifically talked about like recommendation systems can cause a feedback for it. Like, for example, here's an example. I forget, I don't think this is an example in the book, but if you have a recommendation system that puts like a video up for you to watch or for everyone to watch, and then it gets more views, and then the recommendation system says, great, this type of video gets more views, but really the only reason it got more views is because it put it up. It's kind of self-feeding itself bad data. So that's a big thing they talk about in there as well. Make sure that your feedback loops are really good and not just kind of self-sabotaging with something like that, which totally makes sense. And then also, I think, like I mentioned, doing data drift and model drift type of feedback loops is super important. So it kind of ties back to one, but also specifically, they talk about this being like a problem with recommendation systems in general. You're pushing stuff to feeds, it gets more views. Awesome, that seems like it's doing great, but really it's actually content people didn't want, but they just got more views because you were pushing a feed. So you need to track that type of stuff or exclude that from like your training data here, which I thought was a really good take. And then they talk about, this is kind of their last chapter, but also threading through the book too, the correctness is end to end is really what they're pushing, and you really want to as much guarantee that the model or that the data pipeline is correct. And like, how do you get rid of different errors? How do you do? Oh, they have this word too, edmipotent. I've never actually said it out loud, but that, like, for example, there is like if you're mash clicking on a button that triggers an API, how do you just like trigger the API once versus like doing it 20 times? I've never actually seen that word before, and they use kind of in that context. And one thing that I know that's really nice for building pipelines too is using like typing systems and having to build something like Pydantic data models for each task, so that you have a harder time of accidentally putting in the wrong data between those tasks. So that's something I know a lot of people come to Flight, not just because it's strongly typed, but that can be one of the features that like people find, oh, this is already strongly typed. It's something I'm looking to put into my pipeline. There's these other features that are cool. But that's a super common thing that people start wanting to put in their pipelines if you don't already have it, because of things like that, where It's really easy to hand off to newer engineers. So you see exactly the data coming in, and you have a lot less likely hood of putting in bad data across your different tasks in there. So those are kind of some of my high level takeaways and thoughts from the book to some of the applications that I've actually worked in, or that I'm working in now, or that like our customers are working in. Let me catch up on chat here. So I'll open up again. Any other like thoughts from people, questions? Does the book seem interesting? Like I was saying, I think this was one of the more requested books for it. Sorry, I got to scroll up on chat. Oh, someone said they're very interested in Neo4j, graph databases, and AI use cases associated with them. Awesome. I know that was one of the books that we had highlighted too. I thought about adding it in. And then also, if you're interested in that, check out it's not posted yet, but if you're in the system, you'll probably get an invite for it for the next week's kind of AI build and learn stream. I'm going to use Neo4j, I think, but I might open up for people who want to do a different graph system. And then they open source their Cypher language, which is a graph query language. And someone said, could I please highlight any topics or subtopics, if any, that might help in AI automation and MLOps? I think that was asked before I did my whole spiel there. So I think the topics I mentioned, a lot of this probably can help in MLOps, maybe even more behind the scenes than I interact with them. Like if you're developing those systems, like you're the distributed engineer who does the whole ops for AI companies, building tools like Union or Flight. There's more to dive into, but I think I covered what I thought was my high level takeaways that were important to the MLOps ecosystem. And there's more that I didn't cover too. Like even like I mentioned, there's the storage chapter. I think it was the storage one. Let me just see real quick what's in the sub chapters. It might not be this one. It might be this encoding. Oh yeah. So the storage one has different ways of storage too. Like B-tree is like a really efficient way of storing data and how to index it, so you can look up stuff quicker. There's a whole bunch of these different ones they go into that might be relevant depending on what you're working on. The chapter 5 was the encoding. So if you're passing large data between tasks or different systems, you want to think about how to encode it. So actually Flight does this off the bat too, for the same reason, or for the reason like they talk about here. So you don't just pass raw JSON, you gets serialized and deserialized. So if it's going between systems or different containers inside tasks, that you can deserialize it reliably. But then here it also talks about like data formats, like how JSON is human readable, so people like it, but it's way less efficient. So at massive scale, then you start moving to things like protobuf, which is a format you've probably seen around somewhere. And then there was another format called Avro. I wasn't familiar with it. It seems kind of like protobuf, where you don't store like human readable text in there. It's kind of all numbers in the header. And John said chapter 12, stream processing has been an area of focus for him. Awesome. And yeah, chapter 12 was stream processing. Talks about transmitting events, messaging systems, log-based message brokers, databases and streams, keeping systems in sync, change data capture, state streams, and immutability. Again, pretty in-depth conceptually into all these different things. There was also a term that I wasn't familiar with. I was going to bring up real quick in the chapter. Linearizability. Some of these words, when I say them out loud for the first time, it's really hard. But this is where you're basically, when you change a state, then anything querying that state should query the same thing, which sounds easy, but it's like basically making sure there's no cache copies of it anywhere when a state's change. Everything, again, at massive scale, this can be really hard, or it can add a lot of overhead into it. So a lot of stuff, again, I kind of take for granted that happens behind the scenes. So it's cool seeing people talk about it. And then someone said they're interested in the trouble with distributed systems section. I also am not a distributed person, so looking to understand networked applications better. yeah, so this is a really fun book to dive into to get a good look at this stuff. Like I was saying, I wouldn't consider myself a distributed systems engineer or anything like that. So again, it really makes me appreciate all the stuff that I take for granted when I use tools, even like the tools that we make. Someone said the architecture discussion is important. Trade-offs in data system architecture. A system used for warehousing will have the data keyed for batch queries. A operational transactional system should be keyed for throughput, transaction throughput. Oh yeah, and so I think that's a part of the chapter. I think even early on they talk about OLTP, and then what's the other one is OLAP. I think it's just what this comment's kind of talking about. OLTP. T stands for transaction, online transactions. I forget what the P stands for. And then the OLAP is, I think, is that just online analytics? And basically, just like the person was commenting, they're queried a little bit differently. So like OLTP would be like, I want this user with this ID. How do I get that fast? And OLAP would be like, I want to query the last 12 months of data, I believe. Kind of two examples of like the different types of transactions. And then same person also said relational databases are not for all use cases. NoSQL databases are a popular alternative. There's the whole, I think, was it the storage one that talks about that? One of the chapter goes pretty in depth into relational versus non-relational data. NoSQL, which is funny. I hadn't heard the term or maybe it was an older term around when NoSQL was coming out. NewSQL is something people were using, which I hadn't heard that before. I know NoSQL, but I hadn't heard NewSQL, which I thought was interesting. And so it said, I feel like they're still at the how data systems work stage. So the AI angle is kind of stretching my brain a bit. Well, hopefully it's stretching in a good way. And the other person with really, really good comments on the data architecting, which I see it on my stream. You might have a different, like your actual name. On my stream, I see like the YouTube like at name, like your username. So it says Mr. Rogers, which I do know a Mr. Roger. Now I need to see if they're one I know or not. They said, do yourself, your enterprise, a favor. Start a data dictionary. This stores metadata about data. All applications should have same data type definitions or data definitions. And it said it'll make the enterprise integration acquisitions smoother, which makes a lot of sense. And then someone said +10 on data dictionaries for large orgs, talking about just what Mr. Rogers was talking about here. Will save you and future users a ton of time spelunking through the data, exploring your data. Oh yeah, and then John mentioned vector embeddings, which that's also a new section in the second edition, I believe, the vector embedding one. So he said it's a great lead-in for Friday's project. If you weren't here at the beginning, I'll share it again. I think I still have it up. If you actually want to build a project and talk about it and learn more about vector stores, that's going to be this Friday's stream. So that's so true. I feel like a lot of companies still rely on tribal knowledge. I'm sure that's more true than we all want it to be. In some places, the data dictionary basically lives in a senior developer's brain, and they have to use embeddings to pull it out. But yeah, I'm guessing that's just one of those things where you're like, this is probably more true for more companies than you want to believe. Someone had a good joke. They said, I never met a data I didn't like. That's a good one. I'll highlight it so people can see how it's spelled. Any other questions or discussion points people want to bring up or about future books? Because I know we still have like 15 minutes that I can go for the stream. But, oh yeah, someone brought up a classic example too of what is a zip code? Is it text? Is it numbers? That's a good classic example of, I think I would bring that up actually when I was just teaching, what was it? I think even just like introduction to Python about how to think about data types. Although Python, I guess you can move around, but when you're storing in a database, yeah, think about what should this type be? Should it be text? Should it be internationalized? These are great classic data questions for people. When you're defining your data schema, like what should it look like? Any other topic or book recommendations? Since again, we don't have to end the stream yet, but we're getting closer to the end. So I always bring up any other questions. I really like, again, I'm gonna have to go look on YouTube. Actually, maybe I could do that on YouTube. I'm sure it has whatever you list your name as. How I see it in the chat is at Mr. Rogers, which is cool. Mr. Rogers is great. People have said in the past that I've reminded them of Bob Ross on more than one occasion. Like it's a pretty common thing that comes up. So maybe I should be like Bob Ross ML. Or your name probably is Rogers, but I'm thinking Mr. Rogers, like the old TV show is what came to mind, which is what made me think of Bob Ross. Someone said, when is the painting live stream? It's a good question. But I think instead we just do it with the projects, and I'll just be like, and then we'll add a happy little decision tree right here. It could totally work. I think there's like totally some sort of good skit around that I should do. Painting or creating decision trees. Right. Well, since the chat's gotten a little bit quieter on the topics, let me remind people, next month, I'm really excited about this one. Also, I believe it's a lot shorter, or again, I haven't read it yet. So sometimes I'm a little misperceived, but I don't think the series usually is too big for the from scratch one. Let me pull up my other one. This is the one we read the other year, the large language model from scratch. Again, the text to image generator is a different author, but Manning usually does a pretty good job. Also, I think we have I have to pull it up again. I think we have a discount code for Manning for the AI Book Club. I think it just might be AI Book Club or AI Book Club 50. I think gives you 50% off. I'll go find it for sure and post it in the Slack later. But if you are buying anything from their site, you can use that promo code. I'm sure there's some other ones from other people that you can find if you want to read this next book. They're also on the O'Reilly platform. So I usually read them on the O'Reilly digital platform, which you can often get through your library, or if you are going to a college, at least a lot of the ones in the US. And some companies actually will also have a subscription that you can hop on. So like the Seattle Public Library where I live, you can go and if you have a library card, you can access, I don't know if it's the entire up-to-date catalog, but it's pretty up-to-date and it has most of the books in there. So you can access it and they still get, I assume, some sort of revenue or however that works with the library, which is really cool. But you can get access to all those books digitally without having to buy them. So I know I have friends that read the books that way. So just noting that if you're looking for ways to read the book, go look at getting the O'Reilly platform potentially through something like your public library. And then if you have book recs, so August will probably be the next the building reasoning model from scratch. Put that real quick here. From scratch. I'll add this in later because I think it comes out July. I'll double check before I officially post it. And then if you have things you want to fill in, what should we read in July, or types of books that you want me to look at, and then September, October, November, December. I think a lot of these are coming out either the summer or later in the year. Oops, sorry, a lot of these ones that were in early release. So I think people had mentioned wanting to do vector databases. So I'll double check when that one's out. And then I think agentic graph rag sounds pretty cool too. Oh, this actually came out. We read that one. And I think there's a whole bunch of other ones that are always in early release. So I'll go look. Also, I will look at this one. So someone mentioned this one sounds really cool. If it's more than like a couple years old, maybe we'll skip it. Or, I mean, it doesn't mean because it's old, it's irrelevant. So I just want to make sure that it has good modeling in there, but it might actually have great healthcare or healthcare models that aren't in the agentic space, that not everything needs to be LLMs. So let me take a skim at the contents. Oh, and I forget if I shared this link. Did I share the career link? So if anyone is looking for a job, check out the careers page on Union. If you want to build cool systems that help with doing distributed, reliable, durable AI engineering, kind of a lot of the relevant stuff that we talked about in here, we do through our tooling like Flight. So I'm still sticking around. I still see quite a few people here, but if there's nothing else that people want to chat about, I do have a lot of other work that I have to catch up on today as well. And I'll end the stream a couple minutes early, not really that early. Any interesting AI news that came out in the last 2 days that people want to link to or talk about as well? I know I just saw this morning that NVIDIA, let me try to bring up a link actually. I just saw NVIDIA came out with a new agent model, I believe, that sounds cool. I haven't checked it out yet. Under their Nemotron. Let's see, NVIDIA. Under their Nemotron umbrella. I was going to see if it's out on Hugging Face. Yeah. Okay, cool. So here is a blog post. I haven't read the blog post yet. I just saw this morning, the headline. Shared in the chat. So I'm bringing it up here too. So I'm going to go play around with this probably later as well. Oh, and then the other news is, like I mentioned already, I came out with Flight 2 Dev Box. If you want a really cool system that does like tracking the lineage of all your workflows, you can run this locally and you get some really cool features like retries. You can do self-healing type of agents or workflows where you can pass in infrastructure as context now to an agent, or you could just up it in a workflow. So like if this workflow fails because it ran out of memory, you can actually up the memory and then rerun that task until it succeeds, like no longer gets that out of memory error. This is all just in the open source Flight now. It's really easy to install too. You just pip install Flight, which is the SDK, which also has really cool features in it, like a TUI, where you get some of these features without even having Docker running. And then this one, you need Docker installed as well. And then this actually orchestrate your tasks inside Docker, build Docker images. You don't have to write Docker images specs. You just do it in the Flight SDK as well. And then it'll spin up the compute that you define. Again, this is a local version, so you need some compute. Like if you're running a GPU, you would need that on the machine that this is running. But you can orchestrate everything reliably, durably. It doesn't quite do the scale piece here, just on the local dev box. That's what Flight is all about, though, when you actually have a cluster deployed or do it on Union. But I'm really excited about this. It's going to be fun. I'm going to build all my projects in it and run it on I have a DGX Spark. So I'm excited to put it on there. And someone said, sounds like similar to Gemma 4 capabilities for the Nemotron. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. So long context, multimodal intelligence. It does sound like it. Like it. I know it's multimodal. It can do audio, video agents. We actually last week on the Friday stream did Gemma 4, kind of building with it. So I actually built quite a few examples last week with Gemma 4. I used it for audio transcription, for video understanding. It does a really, really good job. Like the dense model does an insane amount. At least I was kind of blown away with the description that it could do, like just running locally. And then also they had on Gemma 4, I didn't look to see if this is the case yet, but Gemma 4, they have like a 20 billion parameter model, but it run, or 26 billion or something like that, but it runs like 4 billion at a time, mixture of expert. So you can actually deploy it on pretty lightweight hardware and it runs very fast. And so I was using that in a live video stream with the Gemma 4 and getting really, really cool results of it, like describing what was happening in frames. So I have to mess around with this next, I feel like. It's hard to keep up with all the models. Last week, there was like DeepSeek V4 preview came out. Quinn, I think it was 3.6 came out. And then Kimi, like 2.6 came out. And they all sound really good. And I haven't had the time to mess with every single one. I just got to Gemma 4, and that's only been out for 3 weeks too. It's just like, it's so hard to keep up and test all of these. But one thing we were doing on the weekly Friday stream, like I mentioned, it's pretty casual. Hopefully people want to build the projects that are prompts, or just watch us talk about them. I know some people have actually been building like projects every week, and it's been a good forcing function to be like, all right, what's the thing? Like Gemma 4, I hadn't actually like played with it yet, and it was a good forcing function to actually build several applications with it. So we might do it with some of the other models too, but I do want to have topics that aren't just models over and over again. So this week's one is the RAG and long context for agents using like vector stores, and then the next one is going to be graph databases for the same thing, like, but in different ways. So using graph data, or maybe it won't be the next one, it might be the one after, I forget. But it's coming soon. It'll be using graph for context and graph RAG as well. But yeah, this looks cool. I don't know if it says, did anyone see the sizes on here yet? Size. Emphasize. Maybe they don't use size. Oh, okay, here we go. So here's the Nemotron Nano. Which one is this? Oh, this is Nemotron 3. So, oh no, these are the scores. Yeah, I don't know. Did anyone see skimming this happen to see like the sizes of the model? We'll dig into it later. But I think we'll probably, wrap up the stream here. Thank you. Oh, someone even said, I think someone said new Nemotron model as a response to, what was new today. Oh, and someone said it's 30 billion, active 3 billion. Okay, awesome. So kind of similar to the Gemma 4 26 billion that I was talking about with active 4 billion. So I will definitely check this out too as another option for that. And something would be kind of cool to have. I don't have consistent benchmarks, but I'd love to come up with something that's like somewhat of a benchmark between these models as they're coming out. I think would be cool, pretty cool. Also, on the subject of the stuff in the book, actually, is benchmarking is interesting because you'll see people talk about, this actually goes into one of the takeaways for like the serving kind of drift. I've seen people do benchmarks for different types of databases and stuff like that. One of my coworkers actually did a write-up on this about, they do their own testing of benchmarks, but they have slightly different compute in different environments. And that can make a difference when you're benchmarking stuff. So I thought that was another thing to keep in mind with these benchmarks. Like I was also writing a talk and I wanted to get benchmark data on different object detection models. and everyone does them in different environments. They might use the same data set. It's like the Cocoa data set, but they read them in differently at different sizes. So it's really hard to get consistent benchmarks. But I just want to note that was something fun I ran into in real life too, is the kind of environment skew for things like benchmarks too. Yeah, someone said they'd like to have some benchmarks set up for quickly swapping in and testing new models as they come out. That's kind of what I want to do. And I think even with some of the Gemma 4 applications I built, I can get not real benchmarks. Now that I have these kind of applications that can do like audio transcription, image description, and some images that I've done it, I can at least do a quick vibe check on myself. It's not going to be a true benchmark, but it'll be a vibe mark. Not vibe coding, but just like, oh, did this work pretty good or good enough like the Gemma 4 one did? And they said if you package use case like video agent, research agent, just need consistent scoring method. Yeah, I don't have the scoring method for them yet either. But it's also something I'm thinking about. So I'll have to stay in touch on it. Oh, and I think I know who that is now too. Again, I just see your username, which says @mindinflux, but I'm pretty sure I know who you are. I don't think other people might see the name if you're watching on the stream. I don't know. All right. I'm going to end the stream here. I'll talk to hopefully all of you, if not some of you, in some of the other future streams. And then also in the Slack channel, which I'll share one more time. If you're not joined there and you want to discuss cool things in MLOps and AI, join there. There's the book club channel, which I'll post the next book in if you want to discuss the building the diffusion models. And then also there's the ML and AI channel, which we're discussing kind of the weekly projects. So say hello in there. Also, there's an introductions channel. So if you want to do a larger form introduction to people, tell us what you're working on. It's a fun community in there. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. So I'll talk to you all next time. Bye.